It is No Gifts Please, the parenting podcast by the pair with no real gifts, but a whole lot of gumption. Hey everyone, I'm Steve Noviello.
And I'm Jenny Anchondo.
And we have brought Meriden Zerner back. We were like, all of a sudden 20 minutes was gone, and I don't like to hold our listeners, but we will hold Meriden hostage.
We've never done this before.
Well, listen, we've never had Meriden Zerner on the show before.
That's true.
So
I do love an in-person interview so much more than Zoom or like virtual or anything like that. And we know you so well. We know your expertise. We know we can bother you, and we know we can ask you on the spot, will you stay? And you couldn't say no because you were like on the spot. So
I don't want to go home and have to clean the kitchen and walk the dog. So I will stay here for as long as you need me to.
Okay, so we kind of left off talking about hey, I'm full, and we don't want to kind of push overeating on our kids, even though psychologically we think, well, if you didn't eat at least half of your meal, I'm not doing my job as a parent, essentially is what that comes up with, and whatever else. I'm interested to know, what other bad habits are we kind of inadvertently creating for our children? So examples in our house are like, hey, you've just told me you're full and I'm going to force you to eat because I think you just want to get up, right? And we, by the way, when our children say they're done eating, there's a difference between I'm done eating and may I be excused from the table. Like, you have to sit there and watch everybody else eat until we're done.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that is completely reasonable and fair. And sitting with the family and having that kind of interaction, even just, learning good manners and, putting the napkin in your lap, it is absolutely reasonable to ask the kids to sit. Because they're easily distracted. And if it looks like there's something fun going on over there, be like, oh, yeah, let me get these 2 bites in. And now they're, talking about bad habits. They're eating really quickly to get to the next fun thing. Like, we're going to slow down. We're going to prioritize this time. Hey, I'm not done eating yet. I'll let you know when you can be excused. Right. Patience. What's the when you're trying to delayed gratification? Right. These are all other kinds of skills that are going to be important in life, not just about food, but in other areas.
You might encourage mindful eating too, or just putting down your fork and not rushing through it because you have to sit through the meal ananyway.
Right.
So you may as well enjoy it. So,
well, it's not all gold stars in the Noviello Bender
I was going to say, it looks like Teacher's Pet over here is just like nailing it.
No. We do, unfortunately, we have family time, and during family time, generally our kids will have some sort of habitual snack, I'm going to call it, because I do think that it happens whether or not they're actually hungry. And it is generally empty calories. Goldfish crackers, popcorn, sometimes it's a cheese stick. We try and do like fruit juice popsicles, like the organic ones from Whole Foods. So it's not all crap, but my concern is not what I'm feeding them, but the habit that we're making out of eating.
So sometimes I'm curious about being consistently inconsistent. And what I mean by that is, sometimes that snack is like, hey, we're going to get in the kitchen together and we're going to cut up apple slices and we're going to warm up, a little honey and make a little snack together. Like, sometimes it's an action item together. Sometimes it is this clearly very healthy snack, but then sometimes it's really fun and it's goldfish. They need to learn how to manage some of these snacks that they're going to see out there. Okay. So I actually think it's important occasionally that the kids do go through the drive-through, that they do know how to manage. Yeah, 1 cupcake is appropriate. And, are you full? What does it taste like? Kind of cueing them to think about, how does it taste? Well, am I full? Because they will be blindsided by it otherwise. And to have a management strategy, teaching them, well, are you full? Did you have some other kinds of fruits and vegetables today? How do we balance this? Having a little treat from time to time is fine. Like, I would choose to have a small treat every day versus save up and have like the one big thing. Mm-hmm. And the American Academy of Pediatrics, usually they're going to recommend like 2 treats a week, or my personal preference, a little treat every day. And
it's like exposure therapy.
Yes.
So sounds like what you're doing is fine, Steve. My
concern was more so like, hey, it's like, I'll give you an example. So I used to be a smoker for many years, and I would have that first cigarette of the day on my way to work, whether or not I wanted it, because I was so used to getting in the car, starting the car, pushing the cigarette lighter. That's how long ago this was. Lighting a cigarette and driving, right? Whether or not I actually, wanted to do it. And I get concerned sometimes about, am I doing the same thing with, the kiddos? Jenny, I know you were talking about like we are all so busy
that is my
managing the meal time, right?
My biggest obstacle, and I think I am constantly asking people this, like, how do you make dinner? Like, how do you make this happen? How do you work? Like, how is dinner coming on the table every night? Because I think, like, for example, like during the week, it'll be school, then pick up Gemma, pick up Brighton, soccer practice, stay there for soccer practice because it's so short, like to drive home. Then we've got like a 30-minute window before we depart again for cheer. So those days I'm always like, okay, so Brighton's got rice and beans in the car. Gemma's going to have a pouch. So she's 15 months old. I feel like those are kind of like a treat food for babies, but I know I'm doing way more pouches with Gemma than I ever did with Brighton because...
you only had one kid before.
Exactly. One kid is so easy. Like, it's literally like nothing.
It's like a purse.
It's like a purse. I mean, it's like a chihuahua. I mean, it's so easy in comparison because you're taking the other child to all the things. And so I'm just thinking, I wonder how I'm potentially negatively setting Gemma up because she's doing like these lobby. She's always in the lobby of the dance room or like on the sidelines with like Cheerios and stuff, as opposed to like homemade pureed spinach, which is what Brighton got. So solve this for me, Meriden. Who is making dinner for my baby and my family while I'm at work?
Well, first, I hope that you would offer yourself a ton of grace and compassion on this because you're killing it. And of course, our second child or third or fourth, their experience is going to be different. Doesn't mean that it's, worse, that it was black and white here, that, it has to be a little bit more convenient. Okay, so everyone used to make fun of the size of my purse and the size of my diaper bag, but literally half of it was like Ziplocs of, potential healthy snacks, freeze-dried strawberries and things like that. So I could at least mark the box on, okay, I know they had a fruit and I know we're going to have to do grab and go over here, just sort of filling in some blanks.
Yeah.
The number of times that I would have that little sort of bento box that had a little freezer section. I'd be like, okay, there's a hard-boiled egg in there. I would throw a bunch of things in there, whether we use them or not, to fill in a blank.
Yeah.
And I walked around with a second bag. And if you looked in the glove box of my minivan, which we called a swagger wagon, you would pretty much just see snacks to be at the ready. And when I say snacks, it was like the healthier options.
I feel the solve is the minivan. That's the thing.
What
that's
I'm
what Meriden had that I do not.
Jenny needs a new handbag and a minivan.
Yes,
is
that's
what I'm
fine.
hearing.
That's fine. I can do that.
But I'm glad that you mentioned the idea of giving grace, right? All families are different. Conversely, in our family, we don't have as active a schedule with kids. Every night, 6:00, we sit down, we have dinner, right? Now, what that dinner looks like varies greatly from day to day. But I remember one of the things our pediatrician told us when we were with Hudson, especially, and I was like, gosh, I feel like he's throwing up everything he's eating. Like he takes a bottle and then he throws up the whole thing, whatever. He said he's not. I was like, no, he really is. Like, and he said, no, he's not. He weighs more now than he did the last time you were here. Right. This child is growing, which tells me he's eating, and it might seem, he said, you guys really need to stop looking at each meal and look at the week overall. Like, can you give yourself a gold star for kind of the trend of the week? Maybe we start there.
And that's, I think, such a wise plan because, there will be those days where you're like, hey, look, it's just going to be the rotisserie chicken. We microwaved a lot. And there were meals that had all of the elements that brought me joy. And there were some where like, well, I got 50%. But again, net for the week. Are they sleeping well? Are they growing? Are they
in a good
happy,
mood? Right.
They are, but I'm none of those things.
Because you need a new handbag.
0%.
But that means you're also being a good parent because you're trying to be so mindful of all the thousands upon thousands of details, which is such a pat on your back. And we're going to drop a few things are going through the cracks.
We're not going to go. Okay, so let's talk about food choice. In our cafeteria, we have elementary school age children. There is a grade at which they go from plate lunch to a la carte, meaning like, hey, it used to be, this is it. It's $6. It includes all of these things. It's a well-balanced meal. And then at a certain age, which frankly I think is way too young, it's a la carte. And some kids come through that line and they're trying new things. And some kids, unfortunately, I see this a lot with girls. They're just like, I'll have the carrots and water. Or like the boys will be like, chips on me, and it's, I'll have 10 pizzas or, whatever the case is. So first, is there an appropriate age if you were to have an in with the local cafeteria at somebody's elementary school,
Yeah.
what would you recommend is the age where they go a la carte?
All right, let me put my hairnet on.
Come on.
Let me feel this.
I mean, Steve already has his on. This is so his wheelhouse. You actually don't know this is like his prime. This is his second profession.
I may use this as evidence in an upcoming presentation. So speak slowly.
Speak slowly. So, it begins with a certain amount of, in essence, education and expectation. And I think we know this, but sitting down with our kids ahead of time saying, hey, you've achieved this level of, age and maturity that you're going to be able to make your own choices. Good for you. So proud of you. Okay. And, in our house, we're going to expect that when you go through the line, you'll try to get, A, B, and C, that you're going to get some sort of vegetable. Here are some of the choices that I see that you can choose. You can choose this, and add clarity to it. We're expecting that you will do X, Y, and Z in the same way. We're expecting that you'll brush your teeth. We're expecting that you won't punch your brother. These are the expectations. So we're reminding them, we're teaching them, because that doesn't just happen in a vacuum. And of course, they're going to make some poor choices from time to time, because it's like, well, what can we get away with? I think teaching them the why, like, why does it matter that you grab those carrots? Why is it important that you're choosing a protein? Or why are you grabbing the water instead of the, sugar sweetened beverage or the chocolate milk, let's say? Understanding why, again, stronger, leaner, faster, smarter, this can do such great things for your energy, for, whatever resonates for them. But teaching, here's what we expect. Here's what it's doing for you. Crazy strong bones. That's why this matters. That's why I'm going to, share this with you. And then checking in with them on that. Hey, how'd that go? Do you need any help with looking at the menu for next week? We were able to, in our little cafeteria, to put a cap on some things where we could say, hey, you can only get ice cream twice a week.
Ours just started that.
Yeah, we're down to
so
we're down to once a week for ice cream.
So helpful. Because when it was unsupervised, oh my gosh, my son got ice cream every day for a month. And I was like, I got the bill, and I was like, we need to have another sit down. Yeah, that happened.
Well, the dietitian's son sneaking into the ice cream freezer.
They say about the cobbler's son. But you make an interesting point, because we get that from parents too. You're like, well, my kid. Well, wait a second. The responsibility doesn't end with, well, it's a la carte. I guess I have no more control. You actually do. You can go to we use Skyward account, see exactly what your child is buying, and have some sort of follow-up, conversation. Our a la carte at our school is second grade. That's when they get to start choosing by themselves.
So like
too young?
8 years old.
It feels too young to me.
Or 7 years old.
And if we're working with what is, then it's like, we're going to have to ramp it up and spend some time talking about like how, what we encourage you to choose and why, and we're going to check on it.
I mean, personally, I think we're having this conversation actively in the cafeteria of my school, and they said, well, what do you think it should be? And I said, middle school. I mean, at least fifth grade. Like, why not like make it a plate lunch all through elementary school?
Because it's every day for some
kids.
we
were in seventh grade by the time we were allowed to choose what we ate at lunch.
I think that was right for me as well. That was about middle school.
I was a sack lunch girly myself, but you know,
I'm sure your mom made homemade huckleberry jam sandwiches.
Completely, she did.
Of course she did.
And then there was an era where you're kind of embarrassed by it because everybody's cool and getting cheese yummies as they were.
Okay, so we do also. There's two more things I want to talk to you about before we let you go, and we will let you go this time.
Eventually,
we do have an audience with older children as well, and hopefully people will listen to these episodes for years to come. We have to talk about eating disorders. I mean, the instances of both boys and girls with eating disorders. I feel like we're hearing a lot more boys. Is it just because we're more comfortable calling that what it is with young boys?
No, the numbers are actually rising, and I like that we're talking about it more. But yes, for young men, we're seeing a definitive increase in eating disorders, and also under my umbrella, there's disordered eating and eating disorder. Both are, game on. We need to address this because one becomes the other, and if we can work to help them with what's the root of this? Like, is this the anxiety, the control, the feeling less than, the constant social media comparisons, these things that we know are so deeply problematic for a young and developing brain. So even if it looks like their, dietary habits are a little edgy and in this disordered eating space, we want to jump on that.
Okay.
So
right
again,
away, not wait for a physical manifestation of it, right? You're talking about just, I think that's so important to pick up on.
Yes.
You're talking about just noticing the habits, not looking for, because this is what people do. They look for the physical change,
Right.
either
Are they
one
too
way or
thin?
the other. Yeah. Or are they having binge eating disorder? Are they severely obese? Right. There's lots of different things where you wouldn't even change size, right?
Yeah, the young man that like stops wanting to go swimming with his friends, or if he's swimming with his friends, he's only going to wear a shirt over, right? You know, and is sort of clearly uncomfortable when they start avoiding movement because they're, you know, worried about performance or being seen in a certain light. If there's commentary or comments about their body that they're making or asking you questions about, you know, do I look okay in this? Like those are some warning signs that we want to really perk up our ears and tune into.
And what's the first step?
I think the first step is validating their feelings, which is, seems like you're really, you know, not feeling so good about this. Can you tell me a little bit more? So validating the feeling so they don't feel like, oh, well, clearly there's one more thing that's wrong with me. So you're feeling uncomfortable, like, you know, what have you noticed? Has somebody said anything? You know, how can I support you in this? What do you think you want to try? Do you want to get some help with that? Ideally, then, if they're able to say, yes, I'd like a little help with that. And in the meantime, you're doing the behind the scenes thing where you're helping them anyway.
Right.
You're quietly facilitating more movement. You know, the, whatever that bag of peanut M&Ms isn't right at eye level. Like we're trying to do some things to make it just a step easier for them.
Okay.
And then it's going to be the educate and empower, reminding them of the things that their body does that is amazing, that what they are capable of. Look at your strength and your capacity.
You mentioned that disordered eating becomes eating disorders. What's the difference?
Honestly, it's clinical diagnosis. And so where you've got some discomfort with food, some funny food rules, not feeling good about your body. Maybe kids are experimenting with like not eating, but then binging because they're actually hungry. When it crosses over and it's eating disorder, we're looking at criteria, which is like, hey, a loss of whatever it is, 25% of usual body weight. Maybe their hair's falling out. Maybe we're looking at, it's not just they may want to eat but can't. There's a judgment around food. So there's some clinical criteria that we're seeing where we make that shift. But that also means that there's a much higher level of care that would be needed to help them.
How important, if at all, when we're talking about, Steve brought up boys, and you're seeing this big increase, right? So if there's a dad or a father figure available, how important, if at all, is it that, I mean, for you got two dads here, right? But like in a household where it's a husband and a wife or a mother and a father, I feel like this topic will often go towards the mom. How important is it that the dad gets involved in that kind of reflective conversation and that mature conversation with his son?
Well, and I want to offer up too, if I may, that it's actually really interesting when you have, a mom and a dad and you're trying to help a daughter, the dad's engagement, the dad's comments are actually more influential, which is sort of a bummer as a mom because you're like, what am I, chopped liver? I'm here all day.
Heath is already more influential than me in everything.
Now,
so yeah.
So as it relates to a young man, I'm not entirely sure that they have stats on that, but I would say that having anybody in your life that can share with you, hey, you're, 13 years old, you're not supposed to look like LeBron James. Like that's physically not possible.
Okay.
And so just reminding them of, kind of what they're seeing and some of these kids that are like the 0.02% that are on their TikTok, like, oh, I'm supposed to look like that kid. Like this is just not normal, nor should it be a reasonable expectation. And here's what we see in you as far as your strength and the things you can do, and just, stay with us in terms of your activity and kind of seeing this through, because it's the expectations for kids that they have for themselves are so unrealistic.
Yeah. Well, they see it all the time. Okay. In the time we have remaining, I want to shift one more time, even older. I'm curious if you have kind of an opinion now that it's been around and is way more mainstream. We have a lot of parents that listen to us who are taking Zepbound, taking Ozempic, taking, what are they called? GLP-1s.
GLP-1s.
Is the jury still out on these, or how are we feeling?
So it is a medication. All medications have side effects and consequences. Each person may react to these medications differently. But what I would say is that by the time somebody's been either overweight or particularly obese for a while, which is just this, category, don't so much like categories, but things have changed on a cellular level that it's really hard to climb out of that abyss. And so, this is where you've got people who are like, I'm eating pretty well. I'm taking my daily walk and I'm just not able to get change. And that's not a fair fight. What's going on in their microbiome, which is all these cool, helpful bacteria in their small and large intestine, affects weight, cravings, you name it, mood. So it's wonderfully complex. And with that level of complexity, we need that helping hand from time to time. We need that more aggressive medication. But the hope is that it is this pause to be able to change lifestyle, to get stronger, to rebuild, kind of this healthier lifestyle with optimistically the chance to not be on it down the road. But we want to utilize that pause to rebuild habits.
Is there something that's happening with those medications other than just making people not as hungry and not eat as much? Is there something else at play?
Yes.
Like helping the microbiome or those other things that you mentioned?
Doesn't sadly positively influence the microbiome, but if they're eating less, so it's going to affect the volume, it's going to affect their sense of satiety and fullness, early satiety and fullness. It's managing blood glucose, which can in turn positively influence things like inflammation. And being overweight or obese does drive an inflammatory response in and of itself. So there's a lot going on there. But more than anything, if it's like, hey, I'm going to take this decreased sense of like hunger and the food noise that everybody talks about, and I'm going to really actively put in play the things I know I should be doing, which is more fiber, more color, fruits and vegetables. Now this becomes my new pattern. So now on the other side of it, I've got a healthier microbiome. I've got a more efficient system. Like I can sustain this.
Right. So you're really using the pause, so to speak, on eating as a reset to maybe reprogram some of the issues that got you in that position in the first place.
And it's mental and physical. So it's not just willpower or lack thereof. It really is what's going on chemistry wise.
And finally, I want to ask you this. So we do obviously see a lot of people turning to these who are purely from hey, I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to lose, whatever the case is, right? And maybe they have the weight to lose and maybe they don't. Are we seeing, I was reading an article the other day, and by reading an article, I mean, I watched a TikTok, that there's a rise there's a rise in malnutrition among people who are taking these GLP-1s because they are just simply not eating at all.
Right. And things like, hey, your bone health, your cancer risk, losing muscle mass, these are so relevant, especially for those that are taking them, which is why, at the Cooper Clinic, like I'm actually tracking someone's muscle mass literally at least monthly, body fat and muscle mass monthly, because I've had people lose 20 pounds, but their body fat didn't change, which means we are compromising muscle, which means you're compromising strength and metabolism.
Well, that really stinks for them.
Yeah. But that's what it is, though, right?
Right. So we can do it well, like
then
anything.
It will be hard to keep it off.
We could do this poorly, or we could do it well.
Okay.
Well, we've solved the world's problems, Meriden
that
Zerner.
one, I'm like, man, how bummed are you when you're like, wow, I finally lost 20 pounds, and you're like, it was all muscle.
Listen, at the end of the day, if people aren't throwing back, tons of sugar sweetened beverages, if people are moving their bodies even, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, a couple times a week, if you're serving up something with color, whether it's a fruit or a vegetable or both, and you step back and you look at your week and it was more than once, if your definition of a vegetable is not a French fry, like you're doing really well. Okay. If you're having conversations with your kids about why eating healthy foods matters, we have some expectations, like you're doing really well.
If you've listened to both episodes of this podcast with Meriden, you're doing well.
Yes,
that's a step in the right direction. Hey, we appreciate you. Where can people find you both on social media and if they're interested in learning more about Cooper Clinic?
CooperAerobics.com would be one resource. We've got all kinds of recipes. You'll find me there and several other dietitians with different specialty areas. I'm at Meriden Zerner for Instagram, and you'll find me on LinkedIn. Depends on which platform you like to go to.
Please come back and see us again. It's always such a pleasure. And how nice to be able to spend some legitimate time with you. I feel like I'm always rushing you through a TV segment.
Exactly.
So it's nice to get to sit down. Thank you for all you do.
Okay, that was good.
You know what? It was. And listen, it's a never-ending battle, right, for all of us. Like the relationship with food. Yeah. There have been times where I have a great relationship with food and times when I don't. Yeah. And there's always, it's hard because I can see already the habits that my children are developing.
Of course, they're little reflections of us.
I know.
Good
It's
and bad.
horrible.
It's scary. Meriden does kids camps. Like sometimes I think there some of them like special events, like one day where they do cooking. Do you think the boys would ever do that?
Oh yeah, that'd
Brighton?
be cool.
I think
well,
that'd be fun.
and that's funny. It's something that
Do a
we
double
didn't talk
date.
about with her, but I think is such a great way to get your kids into healthy eating. Like we have our boys. I don't know if we did it this year yet. But like last year, like we planted cantaloupe or like strawberries or like a tomato plant.
You buried the lead.
Well, I mean, like,
Did it grow?
Well, it did. And the cantaloupe, it was like hard as a rock. I mean, we don't live in a farm, but, but at least you know what I mean? Like if you want your kid to get engaged in eating well, teach them how to cook well.
Yeah.
Like let's grow a strawberry and then you can eat it or, whatever the case is, because I think that kids are really, curious when it comes to things like that.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I'm not going to grow a cantaloupe or a strawberry.
I'm surprised with all that land you have.
We've tried it. We've done some herbs. We did some mint. We did some basil. Like we've done lemon. But like I think I'm kind of maxed out. When I retire, I will definitely garden.
There you go. Perfect.
But our kids need to do the camps, and I think there's some summer camps too.
Okay, perfect. All right, hey, that does it for us for today. We want to remind you a new episode every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. We're coming up on the end of our season here. We've got about one more week to go. We're going to see you for our special goodbye episode next time. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And if you do nothing else today, go find yourself a friend you don't need to clean the house for. We'll see you next time.